Welcome to another episode of Shadows of the Tarot. The farm sheds buzzed with activity as migrant workers toiled away under the relentless supervision of Jeff, a hard-nosed boss who demanded impossibly long hours for minimal pay. The air was thick with the scent of freshly turned soil and sweat as the workers bent over their tasks, driven more by necessity than by choice. Among them was Arun, a determined young man who had traveled far from home to support his family. Arun's hands, rough and calloused from the repetitive labor, bore the marks of his perseverance. He often thought about the family he had left behind, recalling the warmth of their laughter and the meals they shared before financial hardships forced him to leave again. He had visited his loved ones a few years prior, a brief respite that only underscored the sacrifices he had to make. The farm job, one he had learned about through a friend, seemed like a lifeline at first, but the reality was harsher than he could have anticipated. Though his work ethic was undeniable, his heart grew heavier each day as he questioned Jeff's grueling demands, wondering how much longer he could endure such unrelenting pressure without losing himself in the process. On weekends, Arun would rise early, leaving behind the monotony of the farm to lend a hand at a friend's fruit and vegetable stall at the bustling local markets. The lively atmosphere of the markets, filled with vibrant colors and the hum of conversation, offered him a welcome change of pace. Arun's friendly demeanor and willingness to help made him a favorite among the stallholders, who often called on him for assistance. Whether it was lifting heavy crates or helping to organize the displays, Arun's presence brought a sense of camaraderie to the group. One particularly blustery day, the wind swept through the market, sending canopies flapping and displays toppling. Amid the chaos, Arun noticed a woman nearby, struggling to secure her tent canopy as the strong winds threatened to tear it apart. Elise, clearly distressed and on the verge of giving up, caught his attention. Without hesitation, Arun stepped in, his height and strength proving invaluable as he quickly grabbed the loose canopy and fastened it securely, shielding her stall from further damage. Grateful beyond words, Elise thanked him profusely, her relief evident. As a token of appreciation, she offered him a free tarot reading at the end of the day, an unexpected gesture that piqued Arun's curiosity. When business wound down, Arun accepted her offer, intrigued by the idea and eager for a moment of reprieve from the day's labor. Elise guided him to a quiet corner of her stall, where the warm aroma of herbal tea wafted through the air. She brewed him a soothing cup, her keen eyes noticing the weariness etched into his face. "You look like someone carrying more than his share of burdens," she remarked gently, handing him the steaming mug. Arun smiled, his guard lowering as the calming tea began to ease his tired spirit. Elise began the reading with a calm confidence, shuffling her treasured antique tarot cards. Their intricate designs, worn with age yet vibrant with meaning, captivated Arun. As she unveiled insights about his family back home, assuring him they were well and thinking of him, he felt a wave of comfort wash over him. Elise invited him to choose a card, and Arun, with a sense of reverence and curiosity, drew the Temperance card. Elise explained that the card symbolized patience, harmony, and tranquility. "You seem at peace with yourself," she observed, her tone thoughtful, "and you have a clear understanding of what's happening in your life. Temperance advises careful consideration of your options. If you wish for change, it suggests taking action into your own hands." Curious, Arun asked about the card's reversed meaning. Elise elaborated, explaining it would signify unrest, imbalance, and impulsive behavior, but she reassured him that this didn't seem to apply to his current path. Arun left the reading with a newfound sense of clarity, the wisdom of the Temperance card resonating deeply. As he walked back under the fading glow of the market lights, he pondered how its guidance might steer him through the challenges awaiting him in the days ahead. The following day at the farm, the air buzzed with more than the usual toil. It carried the weight of quiet rebellion. The workers moved with a subdued determination, their conversations hushed but laced with tension. During their short lunch break, Arun, still energized by the clarity he felt after the tarot reading, eagerly shared the experience with the other workers. He recounted the insights Elise had shared and the meaning of the Temperance card, his voice animated and hopeful. A few listened with genuine curiosity, their faces reflecting a glimmer of intrigue. Others, however, frowned, shaking their heads and cautioning him about the bad luck they believed such readings could bring. Arun waved off their superstitions with a light laugh, his enthusiasm undeterred. "You shouldn't be so stuck in your ways," he said, his voice steady. "This reading gave me hope, and a way to think about change." Nearby, one worker sat in silence, staring down at his blistered hands. Arun noticed the pain etched on the man's face and knelt beside him without hesitation. Gently, he began wrapping the worker's raw skin with strips of cloth. "This is tough work," Arun said, his voice low but resolute. "And Jeff doesn't care about us at all. We're just tools to him, nothing more." As if summoned by Arun's words, Jeff stormed into the break area, his heavy boots thudding against the ground. His sharp eyes darted to the seated workers, and his tone turned cutting. "Break's over. Those hay bales aren't going to move themselves," he barked, his voice slicing through the tense air. The workers exchanged weary glances, but explained they had only just sat down and needed time to eat. Jeff, however, wouldn't hear it. His face darkened, and his voice rose in anger. "Lazy good-for-nothings, the lot of you. You should be grateful you even have jobs," he snapped before stomping off, leaving behind an oppressive silence that seemed to smother any remaining sense of reprieve. Arun's jaw tightened as he watched Jeff's retreating figure, his mind already turning over the possibilities of what might come next. The atmosphere shifted the next morning when Jimal arrived, his face beaming with excitement. "I found another farm hiring," he announced, his voice brimming with hope. "Better pay, better conditions. The farmer said he'd take us all." His words sparked a ripple of anticipation among the workers. They exchanged cautious but hopeful glances, the idea of escape from Jeff's relentless tyranny suddenly within reach. Despite their excitement, they agreed to proceed with caution, deciding to finish the day's work first to avoid raising suspicion. When the lunch break came, Jeff stormed into the break area, his temper already simmering. His eyes swept over the workers, seated and chatting in quiet defiance of his usual commands. "Your breaks are too long," he snapped, his voice sharp and accusatory. "You can eat on the job, just like me. And I'm increasing your hours starting tomorrow." His tone left no room for argument, or so he thought. Arun stood slowly, his gaze steady and unyielding. "Well, boss," he said with a calmness that carried weight, "you can do it all yourself." Jeff's face turned crimson, his fury boiling over. "You're fired. Get out of here," he shouted, pointing toward the exit. To his utter shock, every worker rose without a word, slinging their bags over their shoulders. United in their silent defiance, they followed Arun, their footsteps a collective declaration of their worth. The once bustling farm fell eerily silent, save for the fading echo of their departure, a stark testament to the power of solidarity. The weight of what had just happened struck Jeff like a blow. He stormed into the farmhouse, his face pale and his hands trembling with frustration, as he relayed the disaster to Carol. Her expression darkened with anger as she absorbed the news. "You're a fool, Jeff," she spat, her words cutting like a whip. "How did you think you could keep workers around with the way you treated them? Now, how do you expect to get those hay bales delivered on time?" Carol's sharp tone left no room for rebuttal. She pressed him to call the agency, hoping they might salvage the situation. Jeff reluctantly picked up the phone, his pride wounded, but the news was grim. No workers left, the agent informed him curtly. Next group won't be in for a month. When Jeff broke the news to Carol, her anger erupted like a storm. "This is on you," she snapped, her voice icy with disdain. "You pushed too hard, you got greedy, and now you'll have to work day and night to fix this mess on your own." Her words hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the consequences of his actions, as Jeff sat in silence, his mind grappling with the enormity of his failure. Determined to salvage what he could, Jeff grudgingly climbed aboard the hay baler, a machine he hardly knew how to operate. The controls felt unfamiliar under his calloused hands, and he fumbled awkwardly as the massive machine rumbled to life. He set to work, the hours dragging on as sweat soaked his shirt and his muscles ached. For the first time, Jeff began to feel the weight of the back-breaking labor he had so often dismissed as unimportant. He gritted his teeth and pressed on, driven by desperation. As the afternoon wore on, the strained motor emitted a loud clunk that jolted Jeff from his focus. The unsettling noise grew louder, signaling trouble. Normally, one of his workers would have handled such an issue, but now there was no one else. Frustrated, Jeff climbed down from the cab and crouched beside the massive machine to investigate. Under the baler, he quickly spotted the problem. A large rock had wedged itself deep within the blades, jamming the mechanism. His impatience clouded his judgment as he knelt closer. Without taking the time to power down the machine, he reached in to free the obstruction. The moment the rock came loose, the baler roared back to life, its powerful blades spinning with a vengeance. Jeff's screams were swallowed by the deafening roar of the machinery as it pulled him into its unforgiving mechanism. In mere seconds, his body was torn apart, reduced to a grotesque bundle that was rolled into the hay and spat out, indistinguishable from the rest of the day's harvest. Back at the farmhouse, Carol had dinner ready, her usual impatience tinged with growing concern as the sun dipped below the horizon. Jeff was never one to linger in the fields, and his absence gnawed at her nerves. As dusk gave way to darkness, her worry escalated. Grabbing her keys, she hopped onto the trike and headed toward the fields, her headlights cutting through the encroaching night. When she arrived, the sight before her was beyond anything she could have imagined. At first, Carol froze, her mind refusing to process the grisly scene illuminated by the dim glow of the trike's lights. Her stomach churned violently, and her hands trembled as she took a halting step forward. The mangled remnants of Jeff's body were tangled within the hay, a grotesque testament to his fatal mistake. With a cry of horror, she spun on her heel and raced back to the house, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Inside, she grabbed the phone and dialed with shaking fingers. When the line connected, her voice trembled uncontrollably. "I don't know who to call," she stammered, her words spilling out in a rush. "It's clear there's no need for an ambulance." News of Jeff's gruesome demise spread quickly, traveling like wildfire through the small community. Arun heard it on the radio a few days later while helping a friend at the market. As he relayed the story to the other workers, a heavy silence settled over them. Uneasy glances were exchanged until one worker muttered under his breath, "Well, he got what was coming to him." Arun, his expression solemn, nodded slowly. "If only he'd been a kinder, more patient man," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "Maybe he'd still be here." Remember to like, subscribe, and share to others, so you don't miss an episode.